Hey everybody, make sure you check out the UNLV Wind Orchestra's latest album, The Return. It features the latest collection of wind orchestra music from the UNLV Wind Orchestra. Keep your eyes peeled, because it's coming out soon. Hello and welcome to the Final Note interviews. My guest today is the director of the Division of Wind Band Studies and professor of conducting at UNLV. He is also the conductor of one of the most emphatic, versatile, and innovative wind orchestras that has become something of a pioneer, I feel, within the music world. That group is the UNLV Wind Orchestra, and they and my guest have created and published a handful of albums featuring some of the freshest as well as some of the most iconic pieces of music performed in various concert halls. Their latest concert will feature a host of world premieres of transcriptions on February 23rd at the Artemis Ham Concert Hall on the UNLV campus. Thomas G. Leslie, as I live and breathe, how are you today?
Well, I'm doing great. It's just a pleasure to talk to you, Seth.
So I like to start these interviews with a very basic question and ask how you first became interested in music.
For me, it was a family affair. My mother was a professional musician, and she had studied as a young child in Chicago every weekend at the American Conservatory of Music until she graduated from school. Then she went away to get a degree in music, and she became an entertainer. Actually, she was entertaining while she was still in her teens. She won a national talent competition, and the prize for that was to go to Hollywood to film some scenes in some of the old black and white movies where they have a cabaret type of scene, and she was really great at that. So when it came time for my sister, who was a little bit older than me, to choose a way, a vocation in life, there was almost no choice. We had already both my sister and I studied piano and an instrument from the time we were just young children. So I never thought about doing anything else all this time. I loved music. I loved to practice the music. I loved to study it, and I loved to perform it. And I never looked back, or I never considered doing anything else.
So how did you end up as the conductor of the UNLV Wind Orchestra?
Well, I came to UNLV in 1985, and I was hired to build a traditional college band program. There was a very small program here, but they wanted it to be enhanced. They wanted it to have an impact not only in the concert hall but at the athletic events. And I arrived on campus in July of 1985. There was a small marching band, a small pep band, and a very small wind ensemble, and just myself and a graduate teaching assistant. So through the years, I brought in some very talented colleagues to help me build this program, and it grew. It now has 7 ensembles in the Wind Band Studies program, and we have both a master's and a DMA, a doctorate of musical arts degree in wind conducting, and it's a large, thriving program. Along the way, the wind ensemble became the wind orchestra when I decided to go in a slightly different direction than the traditional collegiate wind ensemble, and so I enhanced the orchestration to add some stringed instruments to go more deeply into the percussion family, and to build the sound of the wind ensemble to sound very much more orchestral, and in so doing, it became more acoustically colorful, and it provides a lot of beauty and excitement in the music that we play.
Could you describe to me, on that topic, what the UNLV Wind Orchestra is and what you and the orchestra's goals may be?
Well, it's a group of between 55 and 65 talented music major and graduate musicians, students, that my primary goal is to prepare my student musicians for the professional world, whether it be performance-related or whether it be teaching music. And because I live in Las Vegas and I teach in Las Vegas, and many of the students who come here to play professionally in the industry in town, I have decided to program slightly different repertoire. I've commissioned several composers to write pieces for us that are not in the traditional norm for what I would think of as a collegiate wind ensemble. And it was all in a way to prepare my students to play in several different styles and idioms so that when they left the friendly hallways of UNLV, they could go out into the professional world and be prepared to play their instrument in whatever style or genre the music given at that performance point. And so we've continued to do that through the years. So our commitment first is to the students, and then our other commitment is to finding composers who have an alternative way of saying things that could help my students prepare themselves for the professional and the commercial world. So that's pretty much the goal of the Wind Orchestra. Throughout the years, as you said, we recorded, I think we just completed our 19th CD, and those CDs are filled mostly with pieces that have either been written for us or pieces written by composers that I know well that are in idioms that help me to achieve my goal with the Wind Orchestra.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much cool stuff that the orchestra has played. And I mean, every UNLV Wind Orchestra release is like a variety bag you get for attending a party. You might get music from a film performed, or an original work that sounds like something out of a movie, or a classical piece, or jazz, or a strange fusion of genres, or just an original work from an up-and-coming or under-the-radar composer, which is what I'm most a fan of. And my question is, what maybe some of your favorite pieces you've conducted, what those might be and why?
Oh, my goodness. Well,
it's a tough question.
That takes me back a lot of years, but I would say that some of my more favorite works that I've conducted, that I've recorded, would be Three Steps Forward, written by one of our own staff members here at UNLV, Nathan Tenoye. It was his first piece for wind orchestra. He decided to write it in the jazz idiom, and so we featured my good friend Eric Marienthal, who plays in the Chick Corea Electric Band in the Gordon Goodwin Big Fat Band. We featured him. We featured some of the members of the Yellow Jackets in that combo. So that became a big favorite of mine. Another piece that Nathan wrote for us was Kokopelli's Dance.
Yeah.
Which had nothing to do with jazz, but it's a very cool, twisty-turny Latin piece of music, fiery. It's exciting. We also recorded Spiritual Planet by Wataru Hokoyama on our second clavier CD, and that was originally it was music for a documentary that he wrote for a television station in Japan, and it was for a competition. He didn't win the competition, but he transcribed it for wind orchestra, and then we recorded it, and it became a big hit with people that like the wind orchestra. The new CD, we recorded Michael Dougherty piece, Raise the Roof, and it's a timpani concerto with wind orchestra, and it's a crossover of many styles. And we featured Ted Atkatz, and Ted was the timpanist and principal percussionist with the Chicago Symphony. Many years ago, he was the youngest ever to win that chair at 22 years old. So that's a stunning and fun piece to play and to listen to. I also just recently recorded a piece by one of our staff members here, Dr. Jennifer Beller, and the title of the piece is Bordello Nights. It features a jazz quintet and wind orchestra, and we recorded that just recently, and we took it on tour last summer when we went to the south of France to play in a festival. So those are just a few of my favorite tunes. If I put something on a CD, it's because I love that music and I'm convinced of it musically. So everything on our CDs ends up there because I think that it's great for the students to play, and it's good music. And you're right, there's a lot of variety on every CD, because I think that sometimes when I listen to compact discs, I get caught in the fact that I'm listening to all the same type of music from the start of the CD to the end of the CD, and I'd rather program a CD to be like a concert. So I try to keep the variety at a pretty high level.
No, that's cool. I mean, the Spiritual Planet albums, probably my personal favorite. And Kokopelli's Dance was the one that really first stood out to me. It's been in. I think it's the only piece I know of that appears twice. It appears in Spiritual Planet, and then it also plays in Vegas Maximus, I think.
And Vegas Maximus was a tribute CD to the 50th anniversary of UNLV, which wasn't that long ago. And when you think about major universities across the country, you think about all the stalwart, top-tier research institutions that have also good wind ensembles or wind orchestras. We've only been in existence for 50 years, so while I've been here, it's all just been developing, and it's been such a great ride to watch it happen. There was one other piece that I should have mentioned, and I would mention it because I think it's a piece that changed the industry a little bit, and it was a piece by Eric Whitaker, who at the time was a student here at UNLV, wrote a piece called Ghost Train. And Ghost Train became the first desktop published piece in our business, and it became a phenomenal. There was a rage about the piece. People couldn't hear it enough. People couldn't find a copy of it, and everybody they wanted to buy the score and the parts, and they wanted to have the recording, and it was fresh. And then he elongated it and made 3 movements a year later, and it's still selling, and it's still being performed all over the world by wind bands.
That is another thing too. Sometimes Eric Whitaker, he's pretty famous right now, but sometimes there's just composers that appear out of the woodwork. Some of them have been around in history. I just never heard of them, and I might get like a UNLV Wind Orchestra, and that might be the first time I'll ever hear their music. And then other times there's composers living right now, contemporary composers, who have some new stuff, and that's the first time that I've usually ever heard of them. So I think it's really cool from many standpoints, including being able to discover a lot of those composers. And
well, you're right. I think that some of that started in the mid-'90s, and with Eric's success, and then you saw pieces by Jim Bonney, John Mackey, and Stephen Bryant, Jonathan Newman. They all grew out of that original Eric Whitaker association of young composers, and now the field is wide open. There are so many young composers that are writing high quality music for wind ensembles, and that's why I think the genre itself is so exciting, because there's always new and fresh music coming. We're not relying on things from 200 years ago. For the most part, the wind band movement in America is only a little bit over 100 years old. So music before that time would have been written by classical composers for chamber winds. But now the movement has taken off so much. There's so much new music. There's so many bands that are playing good, new, beautiful, and exciting music that it's fun to be a part of it all.
Yeah, there's certain. And this was a question I was deciding whether or not to ask or not. But there certainly seems to be a lot of creative freedom in wind ensembles or wind orchestras. And I guess my question is, how do you feel about that sort of burst of creation?
I think that the conductors that are conducting the wind ensembles in the universities and even in high schools are now so aggressive about finding new, great music. It's like, who can find the newest, greatest piece, and then who can perform it, premiere it, and possibly record it. And it's everybody's just so thirsty for new music that has new compositional techniques or new sounds, and so it's become its own rage now, is to find the newest and the greatest. And it's a great time to be a composer for wind band as a result.
Yeah. So tell me about this upcoming series at the Artemis Ham Concert Hall. Am I pronouncing that right?
Right, Artemis Ham Concert Hall. Every once in a while, I can't even give you a yearly answer on this, or every 2 years, but every 2 or 3 years, we're able to commission or find composers who are interested in the UNLV Wind Orchestra and want to write something for the group. They've heard the compact discs, and they know that the group has got a great reputation, and the musicality of the players in the group is at a very high level. And so we tried to combine several pieces in one concert and just call it a world premiere night. And it just so happened that we had three all together, and we could put them on the same concert. We had a fourth as well, but we're still tweaking the piece, and that'll probably come out in a year. But it's a chance for our listeners to hear something that they haven't heard before, and it's been written for the UNLV Wind Orchestra, so it's custom tailored to us. So it makes it, I think, a better listening experience for the audience because they know that the music was written for us and will bring it to life the way it can be brought to life, and it'll be an enjoyable evening for them to be able to hear this, and for that matter, for the students to be able to play it.
So, getting back to you, who might some of your favorite composers or musicians, and how they may have influenced or inspired or shaped you into who you are today?
Well, I'd start off early in life with my high school band director. His name was Charles Creed, and I grew up in the state of Iowa, and he was a terrific high school band director, music educator, had come back from being in the Army band in World War II, and he just knew everything. And so it wasn't just about band, it was about music theory, it was about music history, it was about acoustics, it was about physics. And I learned so much from him. He was my first French horn teacher, in fact. And so it all started with him. I would say that Dr. Harry Beejan, who had been the conductor at Cass Technical High School in Detroit and had gone on to Wayne State University and Michigan State University, and then went to the University of Illinois and took that very famous program. He inspired me. He became a mentor to me. He became at least one phone call a week for advice and for interpretation and artistic decision-making. He was a fabulous musician, fabulous conductor, and had incredible ears. He could hear everything, and he had like an acoustic memory where he could conduct an entire rendition of the Hindemith Symphony and then go back and solfege sing it to his ensemble, singing it the way they had played it, and then singing it the way he wanted it to be played. And he did that without the use of a music score. So he was just a phenomenal musician, and he became a great mentor for me. More recently, Colonel John Bourgeois from the conductor of the United States Marine Band, the President's Zone, emeritus now, he's retired, but he served from Presidents Eisenhower all the way through President Clinton as conductor of the United States Marine Band, and he's been an incredible resource for me, not only in terms of literature choices, but decision-making about acoustics and balance and blend, and what can help your group sound more orchestral, and how to take care of the sounds of your group so that they all work together at the same time. So those are the three. They're all conductors, teachers, educators. In terms of composers, I tend to like the older composers in the business. I'm a huge Clifton Williams freak. I'm a huge Frank Erickson guy. I love the old music written in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. Of course, I love Bernstein. I love Copland. I love Morton Gould. American music in general in the 20th century is great, and I'm a huge Gershwin fan. And orchestrally, I'm hooked on Mahler, and there are some things that Mahler wrote that are available for wind ensemble. I haven't really done many, but as an orchestral musician, originally, I always loved it when I got the chance to play a Mahler symphony. So those are my primary composers and conductors that I care for.
Cool. So what is maybe the creative process of how do you decide which composer and their composer's piece to play in a concert or put on a CD? How does that exactly happen or come about?
Well, it all starts with becoming convinced that you convincing when you're conducting and teaching a piece. I have to know that when I perform a piece that I can make it viable musically. I'm not just conducting my way through it. I'm thinking about it acoustically. I'm creating an image of it even before I step on the podium the first time in front of the group. So I look for pieces that speak to me. And as soon as I collect a group of pieces that I know that I'm going to play in the upcoming season, then I fashion them into a series of programs by how they work off of each other and what's a good opening piece, what's a good focal work to follow that opening piece, what's a good ballad or a piece that can change the mood, what's a piece that can be fun or technical for the players and for the audience, and what's a great closing piece that leaves everybody at the end of the evening to feel fulfilled. And all of that is, I'm examining pieces as we speak, even for next year, so that I can start fashioning together a series of programs that will be convincing for me personally and for my group. As far as the CD goes, I usually take the pieces that I believe that we have some wonderful ideas, creative ideas, and interpretations, and I usually put those together on a CD. And typically, they are not the same pieces that you find on other college CDs. It's just the way we do things here, the way we do business. And so I look for pieces where people can hear us and appreciate how we sound and know that there is a unique and different quality about this group. And so the pieces on the CDs, I like to be emblematic of that.
What are your thoughts on the world of music today, whether it be for wind orchestra, film music, classical music, or any other genre?
Well, I think the music itself is getting better. Whether it doesn't matter if it's film, or it doesn't matter if it's jazz, or it doesn't matter if it's classical concert hall, or if it's band music. The music is getting better. It's crossing more cultural lines. It's more creative and more enlightening in many ways, and it's going in new directions, which I think is exciting. I think, though, that the music world itself sometimes can be a little concerning, because as we see more and more professional orchestras close their doors, and we see less and less professional ensembles in the ranks, it's concerning that the American public isn't always supporting these types of groups. I think we have nice concert attendance here at UNLV. We do quite well, and I know other college groups are experiencing the same phenomenon too. But when you see wonderful professional orchestras, regional or otherwise, closing the doors, it makes you concerned. My other thought is that popular music seems to be all in one direction, in one vein. You've got different types of popular music available, but much of it sounds to me, and I apologize if I offend any of your listeners, much of it sounds the same to me. And so I like it when something is new and different and there's a musical viability about it. I really don't enjoy listening to pieces that are monotonous and are of the same types of techniques throughout the performance. So those are my concerns, and yet I still feel really upbeat about what's happening with music in general, because there are so many new young musicians and composers that are bringing fresh stuff to the table.
And on that topic, how do you feel this orchestra and their performances in general, what that does for the youth, for the students who come there to play the music or listen to it?
Well, I think it gives them an opportunity to express themselves in a large ensemble in ways that they may not traditionally have in a large symphonic band, where there are multiple players per part, and the sound is more homogenized and not as soloistic. So I think the students they know when they come into the wind orchestra that every chair in that group is exposed sonically to the listener, that every player is just as important as the next player sitting on either side of them. And so it puts, special responsibility on their shoulders to make sure that they perform in a very professional way, technically and musically. And I think there's a kind of excitement about that, because when you put pressure on a really talented student and the student reacts successfully to that pressure, then they grow and they elevate. And that's how we try to help them as they grow into professionals, so that when they walk into a recording studio, they walk onto a stage and they may get one rehearsal on a concert before the actual concert. They're more prepared to do that because they've gone through those similar types of situations here at UNLV.
This is a question I'm kind of just going off the top of my head. Do you think there's maybe, do you think it's there's like sort of a problem in terms of exposure to this music, because maybe there's some kind of jaded concept that it's all the same. It's Bach, it's Beethoven, it's the staple musicians that we know, and that's all there really is, and there isn't all of this new stuff that's kind of hiding below the radar, or just some stuff that's out there but no one's listening to it. And I feel like that's one of the reasons I love the UNLV Wind Orchestras, because I feel like they're kind of leading the charge as far as getting this new music out there and having everything be different, and never really becoming used to or becoming tired of one thing for too long. Not that the music loses its charm over time, but you always get something new and something enticing to the ear, something different from what you're used to or what you expect. And I guess my question is maybe what your thoughts on that are.
No, I totally get what you said, and I appreciate the kind words. There are several good groups across the country that are really making an effort to lead the charge for good new repertoire for wind ensemble. One danger for the concert goer is to assume that things now are as they were 35, 40 years ago, and while there were good concert bands and symphonic bands, there's just that many more wind ensembles, wind symphonies, wind orchestras who now are really trying to keep it fresh and really trying to play things that people will enjoy and still learn in the concert hall. They'll still learn musically. But as I said, there are so many more new composers that have interesting ways of saying things, and there are so many good collegiate wind conductors, and even good high school wind conductors that are taking risks on new literature. I think when audiences start to pick up on that, then you develop your following, and I think we have here in many ways. In a town where there's so many things for people to do every day and every evening, so much entertainment in town, to build a loyal audience was a challenge, but we did it through playing music of Eric Whitacre, or through playing music of Wataru Hokoyama, or Nathan Tenoye, or any of these great John Mackey, Stephen Bryant, these composers, and being really convincing of it. I mean, sounding like it's professional, even though it may seem like it should just be a student group. Why does it sound so professional? And so those are the types of qualities that I think build an audience and will keep an audience entertained. Not that everybody will like everything that we play on every concert, but they're going to hear variety, and I promise them that I will have vetted that music before we perform it, so that I know that it's worthy musically of a live performance. So I think it's happening across America. One thing that could really happen is if National Public Radio or any classical stations would pick up some of the syndicated wind band programs that I know that are out there, so that on your drive home from work you hear, instead of hearing the same symphony that you've heard for 30 years driving home from work, now you hear something fresh and new, like Spiritual Planet, or Three Steps Forward, or Ghost Train, or Luke's Arumque or any of these great, wonderful new pieces from the last 20 years. So I think classical stations could help the wind band movement by enhancing their programming choices.
Yeah, that would be a fun car ride home.
I tend to, I'll be honest with you, lots of times on my way home, or at home, just to kind of clear my ears, I'll listen to Ella Fitzgerald or Frank Sinatra because they were so notorious about expecting perfection from their musicians and themselves that you literally can listen to them and never hear an audible mistake or a problem with intonation or a timing issue or the little things that kind of build up that bring the level of a performance down. With them, it's always perfect, and so you don't have to listen to it technically or critically. You can just listen to it and enjoy it.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as like having a wind orchestra pieces played on the radio, on public classical broadcasting, I mean, that would be awesome. I don't know why it isn't. I mean, it was kind of a genre of music. I guess you could call it a genre. I don't like calling it genre because I feel like that's a limiting word. But I kind of first discovered wind music. I can't even remember when, but I know when I heard it, I was surprised. I was taken aback because I didn't know it was this much fun to listen to. I mean, I was just a kid. I thought it was marching band or Sousa, and Sousa's great, but I thought it was probably a limited pool of music, but I mean, there's so much and it's so cool, and it helps wind music out a lot, but it also helps music in general, in the field of orchestras in general, or classical music, or whatever you want to call it.
It's a pretty wide playing field, and I think when programmers on those classical stations really get hip to what's out there from wind orchestras across the country, and there's lots of CDs that are floating around these days of really great performances of really good music. I think it only helps their variety of programming, but it helps their listener base to develop a new appreciation for all sorts of music. I know that when I play jazz on a concert where people are expecting to hear just traditional wind orchestra music, I think it's a surprise for them, and it's a kick for them. Or when I program something that's new that was based on a choral piece, like an Eric Whitacre piece that's been transcribed for winds, it can be a very moving experience for an audience that wouldn't otherwise expect to hear that kind of music at a wind ensemble concert.
Yeah. So, could you tell me just what you told me before about that Morton Gould piece, because that was pretty interesting. The transcription for his final piece that he worked on for this upcoming concert.
It would have been relatively late in his life. He actually wrote it in 1963. I mean, he lived beyond that quite a few years. He wrote it for the Tri-City Symphony in Davenport, Iowa, and he came and premiered it and guest conducted himself. And I just realized that not long ago when I was studying this piece, that I was actually at that concert and met him after the concert. I just discovered this not long ago, shook his hand after the concert, and here I am playing a piece that was written for an orchestra that I had played in later after that point in time, and that I'd actually been there for the premiere and forgotten all of this until I started putting all the factors together, and I realized, wait a minute, I was at the premiere for this. I met him after that concert. And so now, studying the piece as it's sitting in front of me right now, it's very exciting. The first and third, it's a 3-movement suite. The first and third movements are fast and technical and feature fast technical work by the trumpet soloist. And the second movement is a very soft and beautiful ballad for solo trumpet, and mostly woodwinds. So it's got interesting color changes that you don't get in the bookends of the piece. So it's got it all. It's about 12 minutes long. I wish it were even longer because his writing is so spectacular. And I know that my students really enjoy rehearsing this piece and working on it. They were turned on by it at the reading, and I kind of sat with my mouth open after the reading and looked at them and I said, do you realize what we have here? What we have here is a piece by one of the most famous composers of the 20th century in America, wrote for both orchestra and band, and it's only been performed at its premiere, and then it was recorded by the London Symphony with him on the podium. Other than that we know of, nobody has ever heard this piece, and certainly nobody has heard this piece transcribed for a wind orchestra. So it only gives it just that much more color and opportunities for contrast and excitement. You know, wind orchestra, as you probably know, can be really powerful or it can be really soft. It can combine its musical colors in a variety of ways, and because it's got a big variety of instruments in the ensemble, you can create all sorts of combination sounds that are super appealing to a listener. So this piece has so much of that, and I'm really excited for the students to be able to premiere this, and really excited to put this on a recording later this spring.
How did the piece Kokopelli's Dance come to be? Because I know the composer is heavily into jazz, and it's kind of Kokopelli's Dance is kind of it's a weird piece. It's kind of wacky, but it's probably my favorite piece that I've heard from the UNLV Wind Orchestra. I don't know if I said that already, but do you know at all how that piece sort of came together? And
well, I was there that whole time, so I can tell you that after Nathan wrote the first piece that he ever wrote for the Wind Orchestra, which was, as I said, 3 steps forward, it was a 30-minute jazz piece. The idea was it was going to be a 7 or an 8-minute jazz piece to feature Eric Marienthal. And then after Nathan started writing, and he discovered that writing for a wind orchestra was really a lot of fun and gave him a lot of opportunities, he said, well, it's not going to be 8 minutes, it's going to be around 30 minutes. And I said, well, I celebrate that idea. And so after we premiered it and we recorded it, and it developed a big following, I said to Nathan, so, because you're such a great jazz player and writer, does so many arranging jobs here in town, Celine Dion, et cetera, Santa Fe and the Fat City Horns, he writes for people in Hollywood and LA. I said, don't you think that you'd like to experiment with something that isn't jazz? He said, yeah. He said, in fact, I've got this thing kind of going in my head right now, of this little melody, and if you'd be interested, would you play it? And I said, I will commission it, and I'll pay you for it, and I'll premiere it, and we'll record it. And he didn't bring it in chunks. He brought the whole piece in at one time. Sometimes composers will bring it in stages, but he brought the whole thing in at one time because Nathan is an incredible talent. He actually composes pretty much everything in his head. He has everything already sounding in his head, and he can see it all. And then he just basically spits it out onto a score. So he doesn't sit and write at a keyboard and wonder what this is going to sound like or how I should do this. It's already in his head in completion. So he just transcribes it out of his brain into Finale or Sibelius, and then he'll walk into the rehearsal room the next day and say, here's what I have. So you'll read it, and of course it'll be difficult. His music is difficult. I mean, technically and musically, it makes you really work to get it the way you know it should be. But it also lays down very well for the musician because it all makes sense to the musician as they read through it the first time. They're not doing things that they never thought of before. They're just doing things in his way, in his mentality. So that's how Kokopelli came about. I just said it's time you do something other than jazz for us, and people absolutely loved it. And it took, I think it took the business by storm for quite a while, and then he got a commission after that from the Southeast Conference bands down Florida, Georgia, all those universities heard Kokopelli, and they called him and they said, "We'd like to commission you to write a piece for us." So he wrote a piece called Loke's Revenge, which I have not yet played, but it wasn't jazz as well. It was just off in its own cultural stylistic direction. And he's brilliant. He really can literally do anything. If I asked him to write a piece for wind orchestra in the style of Schumann, I mean, he'd be able to do that. So we just did his other big jazz piece last summer in France, Four Flew Over the Hornet's Nest, which features Eric Marienthal again, because Eric's one of my heroes. And we've been talking about another piece just recently. So he's so busy with his own playing career, his own teaching career, that for him to find time to write, he really has to reserve the time for him to get the quality time to write something for a large score like what we would need.
Yeah, and I didn't know it got that big of a reaction, so that's nice to hear. A quick question about Spiritual Planet. That was music for a documentary in Japan, but it was like never released, and you just did the music for that?
There was a competition for that soundtrack, for that documentary. And I believe the documentary the focus of that was what man is doing to the planet Earth through pollution, et cetera, and through overpopulation in areas. And I believe there was a competition for that to be used for the documentary itself. And as I remember, the Spiritual Planet did not win that competition, but it was on the very short list at the end. And so rather than move nowhere with the piece, Waterloo decided to orchestrate it for wind orchestra, and he sent it to us. And of course, it's so dramatic, and there's so many new, interesting sounds and techniques in the writing, and of course, it does sound like film music, because that's what its original intent was, to be that soundtrack. But he's written other wonderful pieces as well, and he's a very talented composer. He lives I believe he's living in Los Angeles right now, and I think he's writing soundtracks, he's writing television soundtracks and music for digital games.
It's an orchestra that I'm happy is still going strong after all these years, and with all of the amazing albums that have come out, and just the wide range of music and experiments and sort of daring projects that have been performed. And there's certainly a lot of other wind orchestras out there that are also very good, and I hope this orchestra maybe helps spread the love, spreads interest into other wind orchestras, because it's a really fun field and something I really enjoy alongside all the other music I listen to, orchestral film music or for video games and stuff like that, and classical works, of course. But
I appreciate you saying that, and we are constantly getting emails and calls from wind conductors and students all over the planet with questions about certain pieces or certain albums, or just comments about the wind orchestra, and feel like it has an interesting and a unique sound, and we do things in slightly different ways than maybe other groups. Whether that's better or not, I don't know. But I'm committed to my projects, and I'm committed to my students musically, and so the result is always something that really it's their music. It goes through them, and it's their benefit, and those recordings will be a legacy for them for the rest of their lives, and will be hopefully a resource for band conductors and musicians in the future. But I appreciate your kind words.
yeah, I mean, back onto your topic of playing concert band music on public radio. It was something that I tried when I had a radio show at Towson University, and I played some of that music along with classical music and all other kinds of instrumental music, or stuff that's performed live by instruments. And it was a lot of fun, and it kind of helped me to discover even more stuff, whether it was wind orchestra or other things. So, and I feel the UNLV Wind Orchestra certainly had a part in that. So, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for doing this interview. I know you have a big concert coming up, so.
Well, if I can ever do anything for you, Seth, or your program, please don't hesitate to let me know. Sometime maybe think about coming out and coming in to hear the students rehearse or perform. And they're a great bunch of musicians and students. I'm really enamored by the students that I have, and I have so much respect for them.
Absolutely. It sounds really rewarding and fun. I do have an uncle and aunt in California, so maybe they can fly me out there, or I can fly out there, and we'll go to Nevada and see your performance. That would be
You can look for the new CD, which is going to be released in about a month. It's entitled The Return, and it's on the Clavier label. And if you liked any of the previous CDs, I'm pretty sure you're going to like this one, The Return on Clavier.
Yeah. I like how you popped that out there. I was going to ask you if there was anything else coming down the tail line, but yeah, absolutely.
It's in the can. It's just got to be released.
And yeah, and check that out, as well as check out all of the other albums. Some are on Amazon. There might be a few rare ones. I can't remember. Maybe look for them on eBay, but they're all there for the most part. If you're interested at all, and I think you should be interested, check them out. I assume it helps the UNLV Wind Orchestra a lot. Thanks so much for doing this interview. Is there anything else you wanted to say, or are you good?
No, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. And
Thanks.
I feel that everybody learns and everybody gets better when they're exposed to all kinds of culture and all kinds of culture that are expressed with professionalism and dynamic and breadth of new music.
What you just witnessed with your ears was a Final Note interview. Questions, comments, suggestions, tips, threats? Send them my way at timelessvibes11@gmail.com. timelessvibes11@gmail.com.